My name is Sophia Langford. I am 34 years old. I spent most of my adult life believing that loyalty was a two-way street. When someone stood by you through every messy chapter, you stood by them no matter what. That belief cracked open on a Tuesday afternoon in the billing department of Mercy Hill Hospital, the only real hospital in our small city in western Pennsylvania. I had worked there for 8 years, processing insurance claims and fighting with companies that tried to deny patients what they were owed. My best friend worked 2 floors up on the med-surg unit. We had been best friends since sophomore year of high school. We even had a running joke about opening our own small clinic one day. She would handle the patients, I would handle the money and the paperwork. So nobody ever got screwed the way I saw people get screwed every single day. That joke stopped feeling funny the day she decided the money she wanted was more important than the person who was supposed to help her get it. I was sitting at my desk trying to untangle a denied claim for a patient who had been in a car accident when my phone lit up with a text from my best friend. "Can you come to the break room? Ethan is here. And we need to talk about the loan." Ethan was my boyfriend of almost 3 years. He had been talking for months about starting his own small contracting business and kept saying the bank just needed a little more collateral. My best friend had been the one pushing the idea hardest. "You two are perfect together," she would say. "You handle the numbers. He handles the work. This is how people build real futures." I had already loaned them small amounts here and there, $500 for tools, another $800 when his truck needed a new transmission. Every time she framed it as temporary, as something that would come back to me tenfold once the business took off, I wanted to believe her. She was the person I called when my own mother brushed off my worries. She was the one who showed up with takeout when I worked late. So I saved the spreadsheet I was in and walked down the hall. The break room was empty except for the 3 of us. Ethan stood near the vending machine, looking uncomfortable. My best friend was leaning against the counter with her arms crossed, still in her scrubs. She did not smile when I walked in. She just said, "We need another $2,500. The bank is being difficult again, and we have to show them we have skin in the game." I felt my stomach drop. $2,500 on top of what I had already given them would clean out most of what I had managed to put aside after rent and my own medical bills from an old back injury that still flared up sometimes. I tried to keep my voice even. I thought the last amount was supposed to cover the licensing and the first jobs. She gave a short laugh that did not reach her eyes. "Yeah, well, things cost more than we expected. You know how it is when you're actually trying to build something instead of just sitting behind a desk, counting other people's money." The words landed like a slap. I had heard her make little digs before, little comments about how stable my job was, how I never took risks, but this felt different, sharper. Ethan stayed quiet, looking at the floor, like he wished he were anywhere else. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "What happened to the money I gave you last month?" She pushed off the counter and took a step closer. "You are really going to stand there and act like I am the problem? After everything I have done for you, I covered for you. When you called out sick last winter, I picked up extra shifts so you would not have to worry about staffing. And now you cannot even help us with a little bit of money that you are just going to sit on anyway." Her voice was rising. I glanced toward the door, hoping nobody in the hallway could hear. Marcus Ellison, one of the IT guys who sometimes helped us with system glitches, was walking past with a cup of coffee. He slowed down when he heard the tone, but kept moving. I wished he had stayed. I tried to stay calm. I am not saying no forever. I am saying I need to see where the last money went before I hand over more. That is not unreasonable. She laughed again, the sound bitter and cold. Unreasonable. That is rich coming from you. You sit here in your little office, acting like you are better than everyone because you follow every rule. Meanwhile, Ethan and I are actually out here trying to make something. You want to know what is unreasonable, expecting us to keep begging while you hoard every penny like it's going to save you from whatever sad little life you think you are living. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. Vic, maybe we should. She cut him off without looking at him. No, she needs to hear this. She has been like this since we were kids. Always the victim. Always the one who needs everyone to feel sorry for her because her back hurts or because her parents do not coddle her enough. Grow up, Sophia. The world does not owe you special treatment because you had one bad surgery 10 years ago. The mention of my back surgery hit like she had thrown it at me on purpose. I had told her everything about that time, the pain, the months I could barely walk, the way the insurance company fought me on every bill. She had been the one who drove me to physical therapy when my mother said I was being dramatic. Now she was using it like a weapon. I felt something shift inside me, a cold kind of clarity. You told him I was faking it, didn't you? She did not deny it. She just shrugged. I told him the truth, that you milk every little thing for attention and then act shocked when people get tired of it. If you cannot help us, fine, but do not pretend you are some kind of martyr. You are just selfish. She turned and walked out. Ethan followed without looking at me. The break room door swung shut behind them, and I stood there staring at the empty space where she had been. My hands were shaking. I had never heard her speak to me like that, not once in all the years we had known each other. I went back to my desk because I did not know what else to do. The spreadsheet was still open on my screen. I tried to focus, but the numbers blurred. Around 4 o'clock, Marcus Ellison appeared in my doorway, holding a printed report. He was a quiet guy, maybe a few years older than me, who mostly kept to himself in the IT department. We had exchanged maybe 10 words total before that day. He set the paper on my desk without sitting down. I was running a routine audit on the claim system after that patient complaint last week. Your login came up on 3 files that were altered after the fact. The changes look like they were trying to reduce the payout amounts. I thought you should see it before anyone else does. I stared at the report. The patient names were familiar. One of them was a woman my best friend had taken care of on her floor. The changes were small, but consistent enough to lower what the insurance would pay and move the difference somewhere else. My name was attached to every single one. Marcus did not accuse me. He just said, if this was not you, you might want to check your access logs and maybe your own employee file while you are at it. Something feels off. He left before I could thank him. I sat there for a long time after he was gone. Then I logged into the system and pulled up my own employee health records. I had not looked at them in years. The back injury from when I was 24 was there, but there were new entries I did not recognize, notes about anxiety, about possible exaggeration of symptoms, about recommendations for psychological evaluation that I had never been told about. Someone had added them in the last 6 months. The name on the entries was not mine. It was a nurse's ID I recognized immediately. My best friend's. I closed the file and sat back in my chair. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed the same way they always did. Outside the window, the late afternoon light was starting to fade. Over the small city I had never left. Everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but nothing felt the same. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the thread with my best friend. The last message from her was still there, the one asking me to come to the break room. I did not reply. Instead, I opened my email and searched for her name. Most of the messages were normal shift swaps, lunch plans, the occasional meme. But there was one thread from 3 weeks earlier that I had never seen before, because it was in a folder I did not usually check. The subject line was just S situation, It was between her and Ethan. I clicked it. The first message was from Ethan. She is not going to keep giving us money if we do not give her something to hold on to. You need to make her think the business is real. My best friend's reply was shorter. She already thinks it is real. She has been in love with the idea since we were 20. I will handle the rest. Just keep acting like you believe in us. Once we have enough, we can cut her loose. She will not do anything about it. She never does. I read the message twice, then a third time. The words did not change. My hands had stopped shaking. In their place was something colder and sharper. I saved the email to a new folder on my desktop and closed the laptop. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 2 years. I sat on the edge of my bed in the small apartment I rented above a quiet street and stared at the wall. My best friend had spent years telling me we were building something together. My boyfriend had spent years telling me he loved me. Both of them had been planning how to take what little I had and leave me with nothing. And they had used my own medical history, my own records to make it easier. I did not cry. Not yet. I just sat there and let the bitter taste of it settle in my mouth. Then I picked up the phone and made the first call I had ever made to a therapist whose name I had found online the night before. Her name was Dr. Lena Moreau. The receptionist asked if I was in crisis. I told her I was not sure what I was in, but I needed to talk to someone who would not lie to me. That was the day everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me started to come apart. I did not know yet how far it would go or what I would have to lose to get to the other side. I only knew that I was done making excuses for people who had already decided I was disposable. I did not sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the email thread was still there, the words sitting behind my eyelids like they had been carved in. My best friend and my boyfriend had been planning how to take what little security I had and walk away clean. They had even used the one thing I had trusted them with, my back injury from years ago, to make me look unstable. I kept telling myself there had to be some other explanation, some context I was missing. But the messages were right there in black and white. There was no misunderstanding left to hide behind. The next morning, I called out of work again. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold while I stared at the same 4 walls I had stared at for 8 years. Around 10 o'clock, the phone rang. It was the therapist's office. Dr. Lena Moreau could see me that afternoon if I could get there. I said yes before I had time to talk myself out of it. I had never been to therapy before. It felt like admitting defeat. But after what I had read the night before, defeat was already sitting in the room with me. I might as well look it in the eye. Dr. Lena Moreau's office was in a small brick building 2 blocks from the hospital. She was maybe 10 years older than me, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of calm face that made you want to tell her things you had never said out loud. I sat on the edge of the couch and told her everything. The loans, the fake business, the email, the way my best friend had looked at me in the break room like I was something she had stepped in. Dr. Lena did not interrupt. She just listened until I ran out of words. Then she said, "It sounds like you have been carrying the weight of 2 people's futures for a long time. What would it feel like to put that weight down?" I gave a short, bitter laugh. It would feel like losing the only person who ever showed up when my own mother told me I was being dramatic about my back. It would feel like losing the person I was supposed to build a life with. It would feel like I had been wrong about everything. She nodded like she had heard versions of this before. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we trusted to never do it. That does not make the hurt any smaller. It just makes the betrayal harder to name. I left her office feeling raw and strangely lighter at the same time. I did not have answers yet, But I had said the words out loud to someone who did not try to twist them. That was more than I had done in years. When I got home, there were 3 missed calls from my best friend and 2 from my boyfriend. I did not call them back. Instead, I opened my laptop and started going through every email folder I had ignored for months. Most of it was ordinary, but in a subfolder labeled Wellness Center, Ideas, I found another thread. This one was older, from almost a year ago. My best friend had written to Ethan, "Once we have the settlement money in play, we can move faster." She still thinks the insurance company already paid everything out years ago. She has no idea what the actual numbers were before the records got adjusted. We just have to keep her believing the business is real until we can get her signature on the right forms. I read that paragraph 6 times. My hands were cold. The settlement, the one for my back injury when I was 24. I had been told the insurance company fought it and paid almost nothing after legal fees. That was what I had believed for 10 years. Now my best friend was writing like there had been real money, enough money to matter. And someone had made sure I never saw the real numbers. I saved the email the same way I had saved the first one. Then I called Marcus Ellison. He answered on the second ring. I told him I needed help pulling old claims data, specifically anything related to my own employee injury from 10 years ago. He was quiet for a second, then said, "I can pull the archived files, but if this is about what I think it is, you might want to do it from a personal device just in case." I thanked him and hung up. I did not ask what he thought it was. I already knew. That evening my mother called. I almost did not answer, but some old habit made me pick up. She sounded tired and annoyed at the same time. "Your friend Victoria called me today. She said you are having some kind of episode at work and refusing to help her and Ethan with their business. She sounded very worried about you. I told her you have always been sensitive about money. What is going on with you?" I closed my eyes. Of course my best friend had gone to my mother. She knew exactly where to aim. "She is not worried about me, Mom. She is worried I stopped handing her money." My mother sighed, the way she always did when she did not want to deal with anything uncomfortable. "Sophia, not everyone has the luxury of being careful with every dollar. Some of us have to take chances. You have a steady job. You could afford to be a little more generous with the people who have been there for you." I felt the old familiar sting, the same tone she had used when I was recovering from surgery, and she told me I was making too big a deal out of the pain. I kept my voice steady. "I am not going to talk about this with you right now." I hung up before she could answer. Then I blocked her number. It was the first time I had ever done that. The silence after felt huge and terrifying and oddly clean. The next day I went back to work. I kept my head down and processed claims like nothing had changed. Marcus sent me a secure link to a folder he had created. Inside were the archived records from my injury claim. The original settlement offer had been for $180,000 before legal fees and adjustments. The final payout listed in my file was less than $12,000. There were notes in the system about patient noncompliance and possible symptom exaggeration that I had never seen. The notes were dated after I had already gone back to work. Someone had added them later. The ID attached to the changes belonged to a nurse on the med-surg floor. My best friend's old login from before she got promoted. I sat at my desk and felt the floor tilt under me. They had not just been planning to take future money. They had been rewriting the past so I would never know what I was actually owed. And they had used my own medical file to do it. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend. "We need to talk. Ethan is really upset. You cannot just disappear on us like this. We are supposed to be a team." I stared at the message for a long time Then I typed back I saw the emails. Both of them. Do not contact me again. She replied almost immediately. You are being paranoid. Those were just ideas we were throwing around. You always take everything so personally. This is why we cannot get anything done with you. I did not answer. I forwarded both email threads and the screenshots of the altered records to a new folder on my personal drive. Then I opened a document and started writing down every date, every amount, every lie I could remember. I did not know what I was going to do with it yet. I only knew I was done pretending I did not see what was right in front of me. That night, I sat on my couch with the lights off and let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the humiliation, the years I had spent defending people who were laughing at me behind my back. I did not cry, not yet, but something inside me had shifted into a colder, harder shape. I was not the same person who had walked into that break room 3 days earlier. I was not sure who I was going to be on the other side of this, but I knew I was finished being the person they thought they could use and discard. The next morning, Marcus sent me one more file. It was a copy of an insurance letter from 10 years ago that had never made it into my employee file. The letter stated that because my injury happened during a hospital-sponsored training event, I was entitled to additional long-term disability consideration and a separate settlement fund that had been held in reserve. The amount listed was $165,000. The letter was addressed to me. It had never been opened. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark with my hands pressed against my eyes. They had known. All this time they had known there was real money waiting, and they had spent years making sure I never found out. They had altered records, fed me stories, taken the small amounts I could give, and planned to take the rest. Once they had me convinced the fake business was our shared future. I picked up the phone and called Dr. Lena Moreau's office again. I asked for the next available appointment. I did not know how I was going to face my best friend or my boyfriend, or even my own mother after this. But I knew I could not carry it alone anymore. The woman who answered the phone asked if everything was all right. I told her it was not, but I was finally going to do something about it. The appointment with Dr. Lena Moreau was 2 days later. I sat in her office and told her about the settlement letter Marcus had found, about the $165,000 that had been sitting in some insurance reserve for 10 years while I scraped by on my hospital salary. I told her how my best friend and my boyfriend had rewritten my medical history, so I would never know it existed. Dr. Lena listened without rushing me. When I finally stopped talking, she said, "You are allowed to grieve the version of your life that never got to happen. You are also allowed to take back what was stolen from you." I left her office with my hands shaking, but my head clearer than it had been in years. That same afternoon, I met Marcus. In the hospital parking lot after his shift, he handed me a flash drive with every archived claim, every altered note, and every login record tied to my best friend's old credentials. He did not ask for anything in return. He just said, people like that do not stop until someone makes them. You do not have to do this alone, but you do have to decide how far you are willing to go. I went home and spent the entire night organizing everything into a single folder. I wrote a timeline. I printed the emails. I highlighted every place my medical records had been changed after the fact. Then I drafted one message. It was not long. I sent it to both my best friend and my boyfriend at the same time. I have the settlement letter from 10 years ago. I have the emails where you discussed keeping it from me. I have the audit logs showing who altered my records. I am giving you 48 hours to stay away from me, from my accounts, and from my workplace. If you contact me again, I will take everything I have to the hospital administration and to an attorney. This is not a negotiation. My best friend replied first, "You are making a huge mistake. No one is going to believe you over me. You have always been unstable. Everyone knows it. My boyfriend sent nothing." 48 hours later, I was at work when HR called me into a meeting. My best friend had gone to them first. She claimed I was the one who had been accessing files improperly and that I was trying to frame her because I was having a breakdown. They had already started an internal review. I sat across from the HR director and the compliance officer and placed the flash drive on the table. "I am not the one who changed these records," I said, "but I can show you exactly who did." The review moved faster than I expected. Within a week, my best friend was placed on administrative leave. The hospital's legal team brought in an outside auditor. The altered notes in my file were flagged immediately. So were 3 other patient accounts where payouts had been quietly reduced. My best friend's access logs matched every change. She was terminated 2 weeks later for falsifying medical and billing records. Ethan's name never appeared in the official report, but the text messages I had saved made it clear he had known and encouraged every step. When the hospital's findings became public in the small city, his business collapsed before it ever really started. No bank would touch him once word spread that he had been involved in trying to steal from a coworker's insurance settlement. I resigned the same day my best friend was fired. I could not walk those hallways anymore, knowing what had been done to me inside them. The hospital offered a quiet severance that I accepted without argument. It was not much, but it was enough to cover rent while I figured out what came next. My mother called the day after the news about my best friend reached her through the small city grapevine. She did not ask how I was. She asked if I was really going to destroy Victoria's life over a misunderstanding. I told her there was no misunderstanding. I told her I had the proof. She was quiet for a long moment and then said, "Well, I hope you are happy with yourself. Some of us still believe in loyalty." I hung up and blocked her number again. This time, I did not unblock it. The emotional breakdown came 2 nights later. I was sitting on the floor of my living room with every printed email and every highlighted medical note spread around me like pieces of a life I no longer recognized. I had spent 10 years believing I was difficult, overly sensitive, and lucky to have people who tolerated me. I had loaned money I could not afford because I thought love looked like sacrifice. I had defended my best friend to my own mother because I thought that was what chosen family did. And all of it had been a calculation on their end. The grief that hit me was not quiet. It was ugly and loud, and it lasted for hours. I cried until my throat hurt and my eyes swelled shut. I grieved the friendship I thought I had. I grieved the years I'd spent shrinking myself so other people could feel big. I grieved the version of me who had believed that being useful was the same as being loved. When the crying finally stopped, I sat in the silence and realized something simple and brutal. I had survived the betrayal. Now I had to decide whether I was going to survive the truth. I hired a lawyer the following week, not the expensive kind from the city, but a sharp woman in our small city who specialized in insurance disputes and employment issues. She looked at the settlement letter and the altered records and said, "They did not just hide this from you, they committed fraud. We can get the full amount plus interest and damages. It took 4 months." The insurance company settled rather than go to court once they saw the internal audit from the hospital. After legal fees, I received $142,000. It was not the full original amount, but it was more money than I had ever held at one time in my life. I did not buy anything flashy. I paid off the last of my medical debt from the old injury. I put 6 months of rent in savings. I used some of it to start seeing Dr. Lena Moreau twice a month instead of once. The rest I left alone while I figured out who I was without the people who had defined me for so long. My best friend tried to reach me one last time through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted to talk it out. I sent back a single sentence through the same person. There is nothing left to talk about. She did not try again. Ethan never contacted me at all. I heard through the same grapevine that he had moved 2 towns over and was working construction for someone else. My mother sent one letter through the mail. It was short and cold. She said she hoped I would eventually understand that family sometimes has to make hard choices. I threw it away without answering. 6 months after I resigned, I started a small consulting business, helping patients navigate denied insurance claims. I worked from a tiny office above a bookstore downtown. It was not the wellness center my best friend and I had once joked about, but it was mine. No one else got to decide what it was worth. Marcus still texts me sometimes when he sees a particularly bad claims case at the hospital. He never asks for anything. He just says, "Thought you might want to know this one. I help when I can." Dr. Lena once asked me in a session what I had lost in all of this. I told her I had lost the only version of myself that knew how to stay small and grateful for scraps. She nodded and said, "That is not a small thing to lose, but it might also be the most honest thing you have ever done for yourself." I still have days when the bitterness rises up like bile. I think about the years I spent defending people who were actively planning to erase me. I think about the way my best friend smiled while she told me I was selfish for keeping what was mine. But the bitterness does not own me anymore. It is just weather that passes. What stays is the quiet knowledge that I chose myself when it would have been easier to keep pretending. I do not speak to my best friend. I do not speak to my mother. I do not speak to the man who once said he loved me while he helped steal from me. The silence is not punishment. It is protection. I spent too many years letting other people write the story of who I was. I am done handing them the pen. If you are listening to this and you are still making excuses for someone who treats your boundaries like suggestions, I want you to hear me. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to keep the receipts. You're allowed to walk away, even if it breaks your heart in the process. Self-respect is not a feeling you wait to earn. It is a choice you make sometimes while you are still shaking from the loss of everything you thought you needed. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. I know these stories are heavy, and I appreciate every single person who listens without judgment. Would you choose yourself?